They dedicate their lives to helping orphaned animals. They open their hearts and homes to all the challenges of raising a young life, no matter how large or small. They are the Wildlife Nannies. Today on Wildlife Nannies, 8-week-old raccoon Zorro is a real handful for Nanny Julia. No stone is left unturned on his mischievous adventures. Will Zorro be able to learn from Julia how to climb and scavenge for food? And Dr. Michael Katz and his Stork Sanctuary. Will he find a new home for his baby storks Max and Moritz with adoptive stork parents? And will his recovering foundling ever be able to fly in the wild? Also, join wildlife keeper Jack O'Neill as he teaches his new assistant Anna how to take care of cheetahs and zebras on his gaming reserve. Julia Wirtz has taken care of many different animals in her career as wildlife caretaker. Right now, she's in charge of raising her new orphan, 8-week-old raccoon baby Zorro. Today is Zorro's first trip into the woods. The Wildlife Park in Hellenthal, Germany provides the perfect backdrop for this excursion. Since a raccoon mother would take her baby on food scavenging trips, Julia provides this training for him. Zorro's adopted Julia as his mother and follows her everywhere she goes, if she lets him. The big outdoor challenge today is climbing. In order to escape from predators, Zorro has to be fast and be able to get up a tree quickly before he can live on his own. That takes practice.
Excellent, that's already working well. I wouldn't have thought that he could do it. But I guess it's instinct. They don't have a fear of heights. The only problem is getting back down. He'd be stuck up there now, or take forever if I didn't help him now. Great. A grown raccoon climbs down face forward. But you did well for the first time.
Practice makes perfect. But will Zorro face his fear and come down head first next time? The beaks already chatter early in the morning. One doesn't need an alarm clock at Dr. Michael Katz's Stork Sanctuary in Lohberg, Germany. Dr. Katz is up early every day because all his foundlings can't wait for breakfast. At the moment, there are over 20 storks at this wildlife station. There's always a room at the shelter, and that's lucky for these large birds. There are less and less places for storks to breed and hatch in the world. However, the luxury of being hand-fed can only be given to the smallest babies. Of course, it doesn't hurt to have a few tricks up the sleeve in order to get the morning appetite going.
We always keep this stork dummy at hand so that the storks know what their parents look like. Then they really chatter, and that's a great sign because that encourages the parents to give them food. Okay, they finished their first ration for the day.
Ja, die erste Ration haben sie schon geschafft.
Abandoned, lost, or hurt storks can always find a home with Dr. Katz. He gives them the care and love that will get them back on their feet. Although Dr. Katz does his best to replace the stork's parents, some things are hard to make up for, but he's learned to improvise over the years.
Young storks have to go under heat lamps at night because it gets quite cold. It's so important that they have a warm place to sit. Since they don't have parents that can keep them warm, they have a great substitute under the lamps.
It's now time to make the daily rounds and check on all the storks at the station. The birds have a wide range of ages, and Michael Katz doesn't want to replace the parents or domesticate them. This refuge is only the means to eventually returning storks to the wild. This stork was brought in injured and spent the winter here, but he's now successfully recovered and can therefore be released back into the wild, a big challenge for both the bird and for Dr. Katz.
Well, I was brought to my parents by a stork, so naturally I'm interested in everything about them. I've grown up around storks, and so I have a really close relationship to them.
Unfortunately, these birds usually end up in trouble due to human mishandling, and that can be a real threat to the breed's future. So stations like this one become even more important during emergencies. Sometimes the stork just needs a small push to return to nature. Sometimes it takes more work.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
Each stork will get an ID bracelet, which is their own personal passport. The bracelet can be read from over 350 feet away with binoculars, so the stork can be easily identified. It's very special when a stork that's been cared for at the sanctuary is sighted at a distant place. This pair, Max and Moritz, will be integrated into a nest today. If all goes well, they'll find their way to freedom with the help of new stork foster parents. It's a special day for Ranger Jacko Nell. Today, he's showing Ana de la Roca, the wild animal reserve Kapama in South Africa. There's a great variety of animals at the reserve, but the most unusual couple is Roger, a rhino, and his best friend Chappie, a water buffalo. These two have been friends since infancy and still hang out together every day.
And they're the whole time together?
Yes, they're inseparable. They'll always be together, no matter what they do. They sleep together, they'll eat together.
They sleep together?
Anna's just arrived from Hamburg, Germany to start work as one of Jacko's assistants. And she'll be in charge of Zita, a baby zebra, and also help to care for the cheetahs. The first task every day is to feed the animals, and Anna's put to work right away.
Yes, we're busy defatting the meat. Now that means that we're taking out all the fat because it's not good for the cheetahs at all. So after this, after defatting, we'll take it and we'll cook it. And that's just to, kill all the bacteria on it and so forth.
To provide the cheetahs with a balanced diet, minerals and vitamins are first added to the meat. A little oil is used so that the nutrients adhere to the meat properly. The cheetahs are waiting impatiently for breakfast. This is the Kapama Park's Cheetah Project for endangered species. Jacko shows Anna the special enclosure used for feeding. Each week they feed the animals 2 tons of meat. This is a 1-hectare enclosure. It's not possible to have a larger area because at their full running speed of 75 miles per hour, cheetahs might not see the fence surrounding the enclosure. The size of this enclosure prevents them from ever reaching that speed, and that minimizes the chance of injury to these endangered creatures as long as they're here.
Now what we just did is we fed them on the slab. The reason is so we can monitor them, so we can see if some of them are sick. It's much easier to monitor them in here than to monitor them when they're out there. And now that we're happy that they're all right, we can open them up and they can go into the bigger enclosure again.
Jacko now takes Anna to see Ranger Claudia at the emergency cages. If a cheetah exhibits any signs of sickness, it's taken here to be monitored and cared for. Today, Claudia is showing Anna how to do an infusion. Since a cheetah is not only wild but also extremely dangerous, every precaution has to be taken so the staff doesn't sustain injuries.
Well, we think he's got a salmonella infection. We're not sure yet. We're still waiting for all the results. So at this stage, we're just flushing out his system just to make sure all the whatever he's got is getting flushed out. Just keep him strong and hydrated, just to make sure he gets what he needs.
To help the cheetah recover, it's also necessary to give it a needle.
Just need to get me some sticks, just to keep his mouth away from my hand when I inject him. Just put a stick in front and over it.
This sick cheetah clearly doesn't appreciate all the attention. But a simple series of sticks prevent him from lashing out.
That's it. That's it. Then we can go out and I'll let him come in back into the...
Everything possible is being done here at the reserve to preserve these endangered but ferocious cats. And every precaution is taken to prevent the staff from getting injured. So, a series of systems are in place to stop any possible mishaps.
He's all right now.
Anna and Jacko's next stop is zebra baby Zeta. But will Anna be able to win Zeta's confidence? It's time for Julia to prepare food for Zorro. And as long as he can scavenge for food, there's no time to rest. Raccoons are always hungry and nosy. Nothing is safe or out of bounds, especially with a baby like Zorro. He likes to get his nose into everything, as long as it's close by and available.
Raccoons eat anything. Like I said, one can really vary the diet. Sometimes fruit, a little veggies, meat. I just have to see what he likes and what he finds tasty.
While Julia's still deciding what's on the menu, Zorro takes the time to rummage through all the possibilities. The bottles are ready, and Julia now weighs Zorro to make sure he's growing. It's tough sitting in a bowl when one's a raccoon, but Zorro's been in tighter spots than this. Julia has her hands full trying to keep him still for even a second. Outdoor activity is important for these little nocturnal marauders, and Julia takes every opportunity to get Zorro used to being outside.
Zorro wasn't accepted by his mom, and he's from another animal park. So he had to be hand-raised by someone, and they asked me if I could do that. Of course I accepted, and I got him when he was 3 weeks old, and he still had his eyes closed. He's with me for 5 weeks now, and I think he's fully accepted me as his mother.
After breakfast, it's time for a little cuddle before Julia has to return to her work at the park. Although Zorro is growing up, he still has to learn to climb properly. Will he rise to that challenge on his next trip to the woods? It's a big day for Max and Moritz. These two young storks will be integrated into a nest with wild storks. Dr. Katz isn't sure whether he can introduce both babies today, but it's worth a try. His big concern is always the fright he causes when attempting to catch the birds.
Of course, it's a rather unusual situation. You can see how alert he is. He can handle this move. He was brought in by car when he first came here, so he's even used to driving already. He won't have any problems with the transport.
And so, it's time to say goodbye to the reserve. The nest is 1 hour away from the Stork Sanctuary by car. It wasn't easy for Dr. Katz to find a home for these two foundlings. Human activity has made sure that fewer and fewer nests survive in the wild. The adoptive parents are already looking down at the commotion in the yard. But first, it's one last feeding with the adoptive father. The long drive has made these babies ravenous. They need to be fed quickly.
They are still really starving.
To get his babies up on the roof, they have to be packed up safely. Michael Katz is very curious to see if the long drive was worth it. will Max find a new home in the wilderness today? While Julia is working, Zorro has to spend some time in the pen at the sanctuary. But he knows she's never gone for too long. This time, he's thought of a nice surprise for her. Every day he's making progress. He's never managed the face-down maneuver before.
Great. Every day a little better.
Today, Julia's trying out some gruel. But getting Zorro used to this new food addition is proving a little difficult. It's not exactly the kind of treat Zorro imagined after his breakneck climbing maneuver. Besides, the water looks much more tempting. Playing with pebbles is a much better activity right now. His dabbling skills show that he's growing up quickly, and Julia knows that she'll soon have to say goodbye to her little foundling. When considering a nest for a stork foundling, it's important to consider how many are in the nest already. If there are several, one can't simply add another. The new addition also has to be the same age as the baby already in the nest. Dr. Katz also has to determine if the area around the nest can provide enough food for 3 or 4 storks. The nest only contains one baby, and so Max is now smuggled in as a second baby.
I'll just grab you by the belt. Great. This looks like a good nest.
Today, only Max will be added to the nest. The sudden arrival of 2 new babies would be too much for the parents.
The other baby's pretending to be dead. That's normal for storks. It's not that he's sick or anything like that. It's just the instinctive behavior of storks when there's danger.
It's a totally new situation for all the storks, for the baby in the nest and for Max. So it's time to retreat for some quiet observation to see if this wildlife adoption will work out. The male stork is already waiting on a nearby roof, and he can't wait to find out what all the commotion at the nest was all about. Dr. Katz watches from a safe distance with bated breath. Although Max and Moritz were in his care for several weeks, he's always glad when his foundlings find a good home. It's a much more natural solution than raising these babies himself. If all goes well, Moritz will join his brother in his new home in a day or 2. And it looks like this male stork is getting along with his new surprise baby. And so, Max has found a new family in the wild.
We're going to make the milk mixture for the zebra. We'll get the glucose powder. We'll get the milk powder. As you can see, there's some instructions how to do it, because it changes quite often. So,
Zeta is a worrisome case. Zebras are among the most difficult animals to raise outside of the wild, and she's not eating enough. A special mixture of milk powder, glucose, water, egg white, and vitamins has to be mixed daily. And it's going to be up to Anna to gain the trust of the little baby. Although Zeta is already nibbling on grasses, she desperately needs milk to survive.
because as soon as she came out of nature, she got introduced with Scarp. So she thinks Scarp is her mom. Now we have to come in and take over the role of Scarp, because as you can see, Scarp is a little bit too small to feed the zebra over here. Now, what we do is then we basically act like there's a teat inside of the milk. So when she's trying to suckle on Scarp, we go down and we put our finger inside the bowl, and they'll think it's a teat and they'll start sucking it. But while they're sucking out our finger, the milk will actually start. And that's how they start actually realizing, all right, the bucket means food and Scarp doesn't mean food at all. And that's how they start learning.
Anna now has to gain this skittish baby's confidence. The only way to do that is to remain absolutely calm and quiet.
She's looking actually like she's enjoying it. So it's good. It's very positive.
Looks like Anna has the patience to become the nanny of the most difficult baby in nature. And Zeta now has a real chance to survive. Like every raccoon, Zorro is extremely curious and wants to touch and feel everything. Right now, he's in an incessant play phase and never rests. Anything that lies around is interesting and has to be examined closely. But sometimes, foster mother Julia has to gently remind him that he can't rummage around in everything. So, it's time out in his pen for a while. But it doesn't take this masked Avenger long to escape and begin exploring once again.
So this is his room where he can spend time if I'm not here. If I let him run around the apartment alone, he'd just cause havoc. He has to be supervised. Otherwise, he chews on everything and rummages through things. One can't leave him unsupervised in here anymore.
Zorro definitely has a sense of adventure, whether it's smelly sneakers or the sofa. One never knows what things taste like.
Zorro, come here.
Zorro's run around and played enough for today, but the flower pot is making him oblivious to Julia's gentle attempts to interest him in new food concepts. Toast is so much less interesting than making a mess. But Julia knows her baby well, and it's important for Zorro to test his teeth and chew on harder substances. At least this isn't the gruel that his mom tried to make him eat earlier. It's a new challenge, and this tastes better too. Although Zorro is a handful, Julia knows she'll miss his company once he's gone.
One gets used to having him around. He's with me all day, first at work and then at night here at home. He's a little like a household pet, and I'll miss him terribly. But I can also see that he'll be ready to leave soon.
Zorro never leaves a job unfinished, and after this mess, a special treat is in order. Julia has bought a large basin for her baby, and since raccoons love water, she's got to give him every opportunity to get used to it. Time to practice the dabbling technique so important in a raccoon's food gathering. And it also gives Julia a chance to clean Zorro after his messy table manners. Zorro still has to get used to solid foods, but he's well on his way to becoming a real raccoon and joining his own kind in the wildlife park. Dr. Katz has returned to the sanctuary for his other important task today. He's releasing a young stork that was recuperating from injuries sustained last winter. He's now recovered, and it's time to return him to the wild.
Ja.
As he's completely wild, a blanket will provide some darkness, which will keep him calmer. It's also important to move as quickly as possible in order to reduce the time of stress for the animal.
His heart is beating really fast. That's why we catch these animals as little as possible. But now that he's going back to the wild, we have to.
A relocation is always hard on the animal, so one has to move swiftly and use a good strong grip, and also watch that one doesn't get nipped.
So, jetzt wird entsprechend hier gut verpackt und dann.
Now that he's packed up, he'll be safe and sound for the transport. But first, one last time on the scale to make sure he's healthy. The rule of thumb for a bird this age is 6 to 8 pounds, and Dr. Katz notes that he's exactly the right weight. A quick car trip will now take this patient back to freedom. It's time to say goodbye to another one of his cases, and Dr. Katz takes the bittersweet moment in stride.
Irgendwie
Somehow, you're a little sad, of course. This animal has been with us for many months and weeks, and we took good care of it. But on the other hand, this is our reward and our thanks. We nursed the animal back to health and can now let him go free.
Only a few more minutes, and this patient will be standing on its own legs again.
Well, he'll have to get used to this new situation first of all. We'll see how he does here for a while. Maybe he'll fly away right from the go, or we'll have to encourage him to take flight. We do have to see how well he flies before we can leave him here.
This little fellow isn't too keen to test his wings right away, but Michael Katz gives him a little starting help. It's important to make sure that predators won't be able to catch the stork. And although this one still has to practice a little to get his wings operational, he can fly for up to 160 yards, and that's a good enough start. After a few more minutes, Dr. Katz is satisfied that this stork has enough energy to start his new life in the wild. Next time on Wildlife Nannies, Elephant Limpopo and his little sister go off to their first safari with trainer Paul. They have a lot of fun in the African outback. It's also an exciting day for 3 baby baboons. Only strong teamwork will help them survive the harsh climate of the savannah. And we meet Cindy and Henry, 2 baby emus that are being raised by hand.